Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Kevin Carlson, Executive Director, Open Source Enterprise, CIA. Before the program begins, first a message from our sponsor, Janes. Now, please welcome INSA Vice President of Policy, Bishop Garrison.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have one of our community's top leaders joining us this morning. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes as always. If you have questions, and we know you do, please submit them through the questions box just to the right side of your screen. I'll do my absolute best to get to all of them, but be aware we've got nearly 900 people joining us today, which is just outstanding to see this type of enthusiasm for this topic and for speaking with one of the agency's leaders. We also would like you to know that there are members of the press. We welcome you folks here. Everyone, please remember this program is being recorded and will be available at a later time. Finally, a big thank you to our sponsor, James, for their support of this series. We could not bring this level of thought leadership to all of you without them. And now I'm pleased to welcome Blake Bartlett, CEO of James, who will introduce our guest speaker. Blake, over to you.
Thanks, Bishop, and thank you to INSA for hosting today's discussion. Over the last 2 years, James has been on an exciting journey to atomize and interconnect all of the rich, curated, and verified foundational information, intelligence, and insight that we've been collecting for many, many decades, and that sits at our core. Today, the James Knowledge Graph, containing hundreds of millions of linkages between military equipment, orbats, installations, infrastructure, manufacturers, and events, supports a variety of use cases from intelligence and analysis to wargaming to supply chain, to name just a few, and can be accessed via our new world-class customer portal or via an API data transfer into proprietary and third-party systems. Today, governments, national security organizations, military organizations, and the defense industrial base all over the world are using Jane's trusted knowledge graph to shortcut the analytical process faster and more effectively than ever. All of us at Janes would love to show you how we've evolved from what you remember Janes as into who we are today. And if anyone's interested, please get in touch. But now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Kevin Carlson, the Executive Director of the Open Source Enterprise within the CIA's Directorate of Digital Innovation. In this position, Mr. Carlson oversees strategy and policy, corporate resources, and operations. He entered on duty with the agency in the early 1990s and has served at multiple agency and IC organizations. The bulk of his career has been in the area of all source analysis, where he's led analytics programs on terrorism issues, analytic tradecraft transformation, and analytic tools and technology. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Kevin Carlson.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Can you hear us? Oh, Kevin, you may be self-muted. Can you hit the mute button for us?
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Blake, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Kevin, for joining us. I think maybe we lost you one more time. Kevin, you there? There we go.
I'm here.
There we go. That's good. That's we're good to go. We got you. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We know how incredibly dynamic of an environment is right now that you're working on just globally. So let's just jump right into it. Can you talk to us just as to kind of set a strong foundation for the conversation? what are the latest developments within the open source enterprise, your office, that you think our audience members should know about and really be tracking on their radars?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you, Bishop, and thank you, Blake, for those kind words of introduction. I'm very excited to be here speaking to you all. It's great to be here with INSA. INSA brings enormous value to the public and the intelligence community by encouraging transparency and open dialogue, and it's my pleasure to be here today. So first, and then let me just kind of preface my remarks by sort of level setting OSINT. I mean, I think a lot of folks here on the call are probably very familiar with OSINT, but for those of you who may not be, and I don't want to presume that everyone has the same level of understanding, I just want to start by defining OSINT, talk about how it is different from some of the other INTs that you may have heard of or read about. So OSINT is publicly available information, or PAI. Think news articles online, media broadcasts from around the world, that type of thing. And then it also includes commercially available information, or what we call CAI, stuff we can buy. And again, our focus on OSINT is collection against foreign actors. Now, the other INTs, such as HUMINT, SIGINT, GEOINT, are often called exquisite INTs. Because they rely on unique or technical sources and methods to obtain the information that is hard to get otherwise. So in many respects, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, how OSINT really is sort of a foundational INT. It's what's already out there and knowable. So there are three things I really want to highlight for you today. First, with the changeover in administration, OSE, like other parts of CIA and other IC community, there's IC components are aligning with the priorities of the new administration. We do this every 4 years. We have to be nimble and responsive to the intelligence needs of policymakers for each administration. And you can see from the topics of interest from the news, and we're not going to go into that in great detail, but you can see there's a greater focus on homeland border security, great power competition with China, those sorts of issues. Next, we recognize we're stewards of the public's money and trust. The volume of OSINT it just continues to grow, as does the demand for it. And we have to be, and we are finding smart and creative ways to do our work and get the most for, the most intelligence value for the taxpayers' money. And so that's a challenge that we are always working on and really trying to make strides in that area. And finally, and this is something that I know that Randy Nixon, the director of OSC, I think you've probably heard him speak before too. To better support the administration's intelligence needs and to get the most bang for our buck, we are rapid adopters of automation and technology, and this is really to better collect, exploit, and disseminate OSINT to the folks who need to use it. And I would just say, if there's anyone out there who has products and services that would enable us to save time and money, we would love to talk to you. And we have, we have a whole unit focused on trying to better understand what capabilities exist in the private sector.
Fantastic. So Kevin, thank you for really kind of setting us up, I think, with a broad opening there, so we can better understand your position within the overall framework of OSINT. So what drove the decision, though, to establish OSE as the central hub for OSINT within the IC? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So sure. OSINT I think sounds simple to a lot of folks, because I think this is one of the more accessible INTs out there, because we all see it every day. We all see OSINT. What is OSINT out there? Sometimes we don't think about it that way, but we're all familiar with it. And I think for some it sounds and maybe looks simple, but it's not. And I would say, when you talk about OSCE's leadership in this area, I think it's important to recognize that OSCE has been doing this for decades. In fact, we trace our origins, we've traced our origins back to World War II before the creation of CIA. Back to the FBIS, the Foreign Broadcast. I think initially it was the Foreign Broadcast Intelligence Service, Foreign Broadcast Information Service. So we've been around and doing this for a long time. And our tradecraft and expertise, are cumulative, and it's been forged over the course of, if I do my math right, about 80, 84, 83, 84 years. And that's a long time. So I think, we kind of are uniquely positioned within the IC just based on, the length of time that we have been doing that. Now, the depth and breadth of OSINT use cases and the number of different IC missions that it supports, is really astonishing. OSINT requires expertise in tradecraft, data infrastructure, privacy protections, the contracts that are unique to it. And OSCE has developed all of these capabilities, and we are continuing to develop those capabilities. And also, you can save a lot of time and money if you buy, deliver, and coordinate major application services from one organization. And this is something that we'll probably talk about a little bit later, just the importance of providing tools and capabilities to, not only to collect, but you've got to be able to exploit that information. You've got to be able to disseminate. You have to give, the end user capabilities to make sense of that information. So, having a hub for OSINT, provides a lot of benefits for the community.
So to that point too, Ben, and we are going to get right into the strategy and some of these next questions I have for you here. But before we move on to that, I just want you to kind of elaborate a little bit more. How does OSCE coordinate that open source intelligence efforts across these agencies? Like, what are the different mechanisms or processes to ensure that you're having the level of efficient collaboration that you folks need to in order to properly support the mission?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think first, it's important to recognize that, OSCE serves as sort of the functional manager for the IC's OSINT mission. Now we do this on behalf of Director Ratcliffe, who has that authority. In terms of how do we coordinate within, the community. So, first and foremost, we have a governance structure, which is administered by the National Open Source Committee. We refer to it as the NOSC. So I apologize. CIA, just like the rest of the government, we just love our acronyms and we love to kind of sound out.
First, so that's helpful. That's super helpful.
And so we have the NOSC, the National Open Source Committee, which ensures that all OSINT components in the US IC align priorities, share knowledge and resources, and collaborate on collection gaps and analytic needs. All agencies and services with OSINT components participate. Now, the NOSC itself is chaired by the director of OSCE. The NOSC meets every quarter. I think we met last week, in fact, if memory serves me correct. We report our progress to the OSINT Board of Governors, which is composed of the leadership of agencies with OSINT components, and that is chaired by the director of CIA. Now, the NOSC has 4 subcommittees. That's where a lot of the work of the NOSC occurs. So the 4 subcommittees are collection management, data acquisition, training and tradecraft, and technology and innovation. The NOSC also has an IC private sector OSINT community of interest to collaborate and share on working with the private sector to fill important needs. And I would also add that we work very closely with Jason Barrett, the OSINT executive in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We work with him to promote greater effectiveness, collaboration, and transparency across the OSINT community. He's a very good partner with us. And I would also add that within OSCE, we have a community OSINT group that works with each of our OSINT partners day in and day out, really kind of supporting the whole, our efforts to engage and coordinate within the community.
Fantastic. Okay, so and kind of leading up into that, we're going to step back now as you kind of foreshadowed some of these questions about how your office directly engages or supports the overall strategy. So given the connectivity you mentioned with ODNI and with some of your sibling organizations within the IC, we're about a year into implementing the 24-26 OSINT strategy right now, okay? So how would you assess the progress overall into that strategy thus far? Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the key milestones that you've been able to achieve, your office has been able to achieve, and what are some of the lessons that have been learned when it comes to shaping kind of the next phase as you move forward in the implementation?
Sure, be happy to discuss those. So we recently took stock of progress against the 4 key pillars of the strategy. And I would say, and Randy would say this, that we're pleased, but not completely satisfied. And I think that, there's always, my view is there's always room for improvement. We can always do more. We can always be better. And we should strive for that. So I think we've done a good job driving innovation and delivering new capabilities. OSE rolled out a platform with generative AI, machine learning features a couple of years ago. I think some of you know this as Osiris. And we have significantly expanded our automated workflows within OSE to push out. Well, I think one to ensure that we are providing more comprehensive OSINT, and also that we are delivering OSINT at the speed of mission. And I would just say that, if folks remember, for those of you in Washington, remember the snow days back in January. I know looking out today here, it's easy to forget that there was once snow on the ground. But those snow days, OSE's production really kept humming. Even though there were only a few folks in the office, and a lot of that was because we've created a lot of automation to produce summaries of OSINT that we can disseminate to the community. And it's really been that automation really is becoming a game changer within OSINT. Coordinating data.
I'm sorry, no, please
I'm sorry.
continue. I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
So coordinating data acquisition, expanding sharing, data sharing is improving. The generative AI platform Osiris that I mentioned is available to anyone in the IC, and we're looking at ways of expanding that to non-IC U.S. government agencies. So we're making progress there. Integrated collection management is moving ahead, but is extremely challenging given the different IC missions that OSINT supports. We knew this area would be hard, and it has been, but we will continue working to address that, and we anticipate continue to make progress. And finally, the last piece of the IC strategy is to professionalize the OSINT discipline. This is really about changing IC culture and mindsets for how and where work is done. There's a lot more work that can be done on the low side or the unclassified fabric without compromising classified information. And that's, most of our work, we do on the unclassified side. Now, unclassified, with stress, does not mean unreliable or unimportant. It's just it's different from much of the way that the rest of the IC operates. We and our IC partners are documenting and sharing tradecraft and training to highlight the art of the possible with OSINT, all the while adhering to strong CI and security practices. The newer generation of IC officers, I would have to say, is far more tech savvy and comfortable with OSINT. So that is really helping too. So a real shout out to the younger generation who've really kind of grown up with a lot of these technologies and capabilities. So that kind of in a nutshell is kind of where we where we are. And I think, there's room for improvement, but we're seeing results.
Yeah, and the four pillars, the way you really laid them out, thank you for that, because it kind of gives clarity to not only the current state, but the planned future state and how you folks are going to move forward. So, and you really talked a lot about capabilities and the development of new tools, particularly new AI tools that the IC is using in order to really engage in data sharing and data analytics. So, can you talk a little bit about how impactful some of this, the declassified nature of OSINT, as you kind of alluded to, has been in providing more opportunities when we talk about test and development of some of these new capabilities?
Sure, we'd love to do that. So we couldn't do OSINT without our unclassified infrastructure. Now, a lot of that is because the information that comprises OSINT, it starts out in the, unclassified public realm. But with our, with our unclassified technology, just say that technologies change fast and companies are innovating fast. We are able to use the infrastructure we've built to test and deploy new technology faster than we think anyone else in the IC can, because we run on a commercial multi-cloud infrastructure. We are set up to really take advantage of the innovations that industry has. We're able to adapt them much more quickly given the infrastructure we operate on. Let me give you an example. So ChatGPT, caused a real splash in early 2023. OSE started testing and working with partners on generative AI. And I apologize if I call it GAI. We typically just call it GAI. And I don't know if that's what everyone does, but it's, again, we just love to shorten everything. So we started doing that within a month, and then we actually deployed what is now Osiris into production in a production capability by September 2023. So we were able to, certainly by government standards, and I would say most standards, we were able to quickly put something in use, leveraging this the latest technology, and so. That's I think a powerful example of what we've been able to do in that space.
No, that's fantastic. And this is a perfect lead in first for our first audience question. And folks, again, if you have questions, please send them in and let us know. You have it just to the right of your screen. The first one from Vivian Wilson asked, and this is a direct follow-on from what we were just speaking about. Well, what do you believe are some of the most promising innovations on the horizon to optimize the collection and dissemination of OSINT?
Well, I mean, I think, right now, let me take a step back. So, I think it might be helpful to kind of talk about the various kinds of things that we need to do. So, we've been, in terms of, AI, we've talked a little bit about GAI and how we're doing it, but we've been leveraging automated translation capabilities for, years. So, that's an integral part of what we do. I think, I think those capabilities continue to improve and evolve and develop, and so I think those obviously anything that can improve our ability to translate at scale, and we're talking about translation of all forms of OSINT. I think translating at scale and more accurately, those technologies are going to be critical for OSE and for the OSINT community overall. Touching again on, GAI, I mean, right now that, and again, I'll be honest, I'm not a technologist by trade. Most of my involvement in technology is more kind of, practical application of technologies to support the analytic mission previously and now OSE. But, I think that has really been a game changer. And I think, one of the biggest challenges with OSINT is just, there's a huge volume problem. There is a lot of information. I mean, we all see it every day. You look on the internet. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of information out there, and the challenge is, trying to, how do we better collect what we need? How do we better, exploit what we do collect? Being able to do that at scale. And then how do we enable our end users to make sense of all that information? So I think this is where I touched a little bit on, kind of that human machine partnering, concept. But I think that's where, AI is really been kind of that game changer, that just the ability to sort of interrogate the data with, natural language questions and really kind of pull out exactly what we're looking for, and doing something. And this is kind of harkening back to my time in as an analyst and analytic manager. It's maybe it's just me, but my brain has a certain capacity limitation. I can't, I can only make sense of so much information. I think we all, that's one of our, once we can make sense of that information, the human brain is amazing at, kind of building connections and kind of thinking outside the box. But the real challenge is, how do you pull all that together? And that's a fundamental problem with OSINT. And so I think that's where AI is really going to, enable us to be far more effective at not only collecting and disseminating, but also exploiting that. And that's, ultimately, that's really what matters for our country's national security. But I think this is also where we'd love to hear from industry too, about what are some of those emerging technologies out there and how could we apply them. I think we understand the challenges we face, but I think going back to like ChatGPT, where that really kind of took everyone by, maybe not everyone by surprise, but took a lot of us by surprise. Like, wow, this is a really cool technology. Where'd this come from? And so I think that's where we recognize that we need to be engaged with industry and academia, just to understand what's coming down the horizon.
Yeah, and to that point, we'll follow up a little bit here as we close out in the next 10 or 15 minutes with some points about how industry can look for opportunities to engage with the IC broadly, but also specifically with the CIA. But to this discussion, you really hit the nail on the head with a lot of the pieces about the overwhelming volume of open source data that lives out there. And we know companies like our sponsor, James, really help to utilize tools to cut through the static and the noise to help you guys find what the important pieces are and how they need to come together to support the mission. So we have another great question right on top of that from Henry Myers from our audience that says, well, how will OSINT continue to be as efficient as possible for open source when we're looking at so much hyper-realistic fake content that is being made now? When you talk about deep fakes, the audio, the visual, text-related deep fakes, can you speak a little bit on that and the current state, maybe a little bit of the future state?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, let me first begin by saying, that our officers, in OSE, and I think, this applies across the community, the OSINT community in the U.S. government. They're, collection specialists. They have expertise in all sorts of OSINT. A key part of their job is source validation, just like any other intelligence officer. I mean, this is, something that, we talked a little bit about tradecraft earlier, and this is part of our tradecraft. As the amount of information has exploded, we've also been looking at different multimedia forensics tools and tradecraft that will help us with the source validation. We recognize that, this is a challenge, and we're certainly taking steps to look at this. I can't necessarily go into, all the detail. Some of it is because I don't always understand. I mean, some of this, gets into some really, advanced, technology, but we are working on that. We also have a lot of data. I mean, maybe one of the great things about OSINT is we have a tremendous amount of data that we can use as a baseline to help us validate things. So, spoofing, that I think, could, it would be, a major effort, but, we don't. Now, obviously, we don't want to depend on that. We don't want to let our guard down. So it's really, this is a key priority for us, is trying to understand, kind of what is, be able to identify, fake content, and certainly content that is intended to mislead.
Yeah, and to that point, from your own experiences as a data analyst, as a manager of data analytics and teams of analysts, and we've spoken a lot about the future capabilities and a lot about what we're seeing in terms of the use of these technologies by new generations themselves. And you talk about Gen Z and others. So, what skills and capabilities are the most critical right now for the next generation of future analysts, future officers, in order to be professionals within the OSINT culture? As you mentioned previously, they're a part of the pillars, and I wrote this down, the professionalizing or the continued growth of the professional side of the OSINT culture. So what types of skills and capabilities are you looking for from the next gen of professionals?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question, because I think this is an area where things really are changing, and we're looking for officers that are more digitally savvy and comfortable working on kind of new frontiers, dealing with technology. A lot of the tradecraft for tomorrow's OSINT professional is still being formed too, and so there's got to be that kind of flexibility. And they have to be comfortable working in teams to succeed. Now, I don't think that is any different. And we're still going to be looking for language skills and knowledge in certain areas, because at the end of the day, they're intelligence professionals, and we have to understand the context in which we operate, and the fact that we deliver, we are seeking to deliver intelligence to intelligence, customers, to analysts, to policymakers and others. So we have to kind of understand those priorities and how we're, why we are delivering this information. But it's really, to me, it's that digitally savvy part, is the ability to, things have changed a lot since World War II and since the early days of the Cold War. It's not just about reading and translating newspaper clippings and things like that, or translating broadcast media. Those are, we still have to figure out how to do that now. A lot of it, though, we have to do, because we have to do it at scale. We're leveraging technology, and we need people who can, again, it's that human machine teaming, having people who are comfortable working with technology. Technology doesn't necessarily replace people. It helps, it will make people much more effective. And so what we want are those folks that will embrace the technology, will embrace working with AI and other advanced capabilities, because it makes them more successful, makes them more productive. And that at the end of the day means that we are delivering more value to the IC and to policymakers.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. So as we look to getting close to our time here, I think we still got a little ways to go. But so given that, when we talk about these skill sets and we talk about what you're looking for the future officer, future analyst out there, we discussed a little bit about industry and academia and the roles they play previously. So what role in this regard can you see them playing in supporting OSE's overall mission? And are there any specific areas where you need or you believe there could be greater public-private partnerships with both industry and the academic sector?
Sure. So first, let me just begin by saying, we work with many companies in what we believe is true partnership. We recognize we can't do this alone. And we also recognize, we talked about this a little bit earlier. This is an area where, we're all, we all see OSINT every day. We all, ultimately consume OSINT, every day. And so this is an area where, I think there are probably a lot of really good ideas out there that are not, not within OSC or within the OSINT community within the IC. And so we recognize that we can't do OSINT alone. The companies we partner with have experts in data and analytics. They're constantly developing new tools and applications to improve workflows and respond to changes in the technical landscape. We also recognize and, be real about, honest about this. Working with us is hard. For those of you who worked and dealt with the IC, it's not always, easy. We'll just leave it at that. But they know that, our partners know that this work matters to national security, and they go above and beyond to work with us, and we're very grateful for their partnership. I think we can do more to work with the private sector and universities to professionalize OSINT and understand the possibilities and pitfalls of AI and machine learning and other advanced technologies. And this kind of goes to the point of, we think there's a lot of really good ideas out there, and also just some of the emerging technologies. It's trying to get, trying to at least get a heads up or an understanding of where things are going, so that we can be better prepared to implement that technology when it comes about. From what we've seen thus far, a lot of these emerging technologies, they're kind of breathtaking. They pose profound questions about data governance. How do we, manage and govern, such vast amounts of data? And I think we're always looking, we're always on the lookout for promising new products and services. And we just encourage industry to, don't hesitate. We have a private sector and academic engagement program that's eager to, learn about all the great things that, your company, that the industry, academia is working on, and what you all can do to support the OSINT mission.
Fantastic. And to that point, and speaking of partnerships, the level of collaboration you're looking for, and I know, like, dealing with the CIA external engagement leads and looking for opportunities through contracting, a variety of contracting vehicles and other pieces. It also begs the question, well, how is OSE working with our allies, the U.S. allies and partners, kind of to improve this entire picture when it comes to open source intelligence and data sharing? We know that it's likely treated differently from what we may see in terms of classified information with Five Eyes partners, for instance. So how are you, as closely as you can speak to it, particularly working with partners in addressing global threats, for instance?
Sure, I'd be happy to touch on that. So I think we've reinvigorated and expanded our foreign partnerships via the International Open Source Working Group, which now has more than 24 member countries. This group dates back to the 90s, but is kind of ebbed and flowed over the decades, and we're committed to sort of reinvigorating that effort. It's a forum to share trends and perspectives and perhaps data one day. I think, the challenges, the OSINT challenges that we in the US IC face, are generally the same ones around the globe. And given that, ultimately our mission is collecting against foreign actors, some of these other countries, and our partners overseas, sometimes they're in a far better position to help us get the information, that we need. So, I think, in sum, we're really looking to, continue to expand that and some of this goes back to, how do we become more effective? And I think, developing, it's not just partnerships with industry, but, partnerships with industry, partnerships with academia, but also, partnerships with allies around the globe, because, again, one of the biggest challenges, there's so much out there, And, we really, it kind of takes a team to do OSINT.
Absolutely. And to that point, and in the last 5 minutes we had two phenomenal, I think, follow-on questions to kind of close us out with. So based on that level of teaming and sharing, Mike, and forgive me, Mike, if I mispronounce your name, Grayhack, I believe. Are there any initiatives potentially rolling out that are looking at opportunities for OSE to share some type of curated feed with contractors so they know that they are potentially maybe targeted? In a kind of example, if company A or some company is potentially being targeted and being able to share in real time or at some time very closely that type of information based off of what you're seeing from your own analytics.
So that's a great question. I think that's something, I will definitely, let me make a note of that and take back. I think
another
it's
question that we can take back
sure.
and for the audience, what we can do is as we get this video up and we put it out as a part of our newsletter, maybe we can follow up with a little bit of the information here. So and I think Mike, thank you for that question. I think that's a phenomenal one.
Yeah.
And the one follow up from John Miner asked, what's the best way to engage with OSE's private sector and academic engagement program? So if there is an email inbox of some sort or a particular person that our companies and these academics can reach out to directly, like I said, some type of external engagement office or officer, having those names and we can share them would really be helpful as well.
Yeah, let me get that for you. And that was one of those things I had meant to make sure that I, asked the person who leads that effort. And I apologize.
No apologies. There's a lot of data coming in. There's a lot of data
Yeah.
coming in.
Well, and some of it was, like yesterday, I was just kind of dashing around, and I had to leave early to kind of do our sound check here at home. And there were a couple of things that I had intended to do, and I had forgot, but that's great. We will certainly get that to you. And I've written down, let me just make sure I got that question right. I think it was from Mike about sharing information with contractors on,
potential threats. Yeah.
Potential threats to them
if they're being targeted. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me
or any type of sharing of a kind of a curated feed, as he said, so they can understand the information that's out there and see how it may affect their work or how it may affect them as organizations. And then a follow on to that, with respect to that, a content feed that could be good for shaping and building demos as well too, where companies can help you kind of sift through some of that information as you're getting it. Lastly, and we only got about 2.5 minutes here, so I want to move quickly. Looking ahead beyond 2026, how do you see the role of OSINT evolving within the IC? And then along with that question, any final thoughts you may have, Kevin? You've just been sensational sharing your expertise and wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you are, most welcome. I've really enjoyed this. As I said earlier, OSINT, or we kind of touched on earlier, I think I mentioned that, we kind of see OSINT as sort of a foundational int. And I think, its prominence is going to increase even more. Alongside, you'll see the, greater professionalization within this discipline as we work toward that. And, I think we can expect automation, more machine curated insights to help analysts save time and, ultimately be more successful and help them better make sense of information. Again, touching on the human machine teaming, I think, in the future, we're going to see more of that. And I think too, we're going to see more, public-private partnerships and in areas and in ways that we don't, really see, now. And I think, in some, I think, what we're going to do, is some of the challenges we face today in OSINT, really, they're just going to be magnified even more in the future. I mean, I think most of us probably look around and we probably won't see less information in the future. We're going to see more and more and more diverse sources of information and who knows kind of in the future what some of those platforms and the ways that people will communicate will change. I mean, I think there's a lot can change, and I know just from my time as an analyst, I think the moment you start thinking exactly how things are going to be, things change, and they're it's trying to anticipating the future is a real challenge.
Yeah.
And so I think, that's a good way of, maybe ending on, as I mentioned, this is, I think OSINT really is sort of a team effort, and, we need everyone's help to, not only, the core functions of, helping us, collect and, exploit and disseminate OSINT, but also just helping us see the future and what's coming and how can we position ourselves for that, because this is really this is a challenging area. But I do think going back to the I just want to maybe end on it being kind of that foundational. I think one thing we didn't have a really chance to touch on, but just is the just the opportunities with OSINT, as sort of foundational, if we can do this right, I mean, we can help, all of the other INTs be more successful and more focused on the real priorities. So I think that the challenge, is, how do we continue to up our game so that we can deliver the most value that we can from OSINT, so that like the other the other INTs, the other forms of collection, can be more successful and ultimately used for those things that are really important, that are there, or I shouldn't say this is all important, but for those things that are really difficult to acquire. And so I think that is, to me, that's the real challenge, but it's also the real opportunity in OSINT.
Yeah, and
That's what makes the job fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing to work, like we said, in partnerships, not only globally, but here in the U.S., working with companies in industry, with academia, to really bring it all together. Well, with that, we're a little over time. Thank you so much again, Kevin, for joining us. We truly appreciate your time and wisdom. Thank all of you for joining us as well. One of the biggest crowds we've had in recent. It's been an incredible, valuable conversation. A special thank you to James, to Blake, the whole team over there, for sponsoring this event, and for all of you joining us. We appreciate your time and engagement. When the webinar ends, please take the short survey that will pop up. It only takes a moment to complete, and it really does help us shape our future programming. And speaking of future programming, looking ahead, we have several on the horizon. April 22nd, we're going to hold our annual spring symposium. This year, the theme is integrating emerging tech, featuring an absolute all-star bang-up lineup of speakers. They're going to be discussing counter intelligence challenges, leveraging AI for competitive advantage, and rethinking acquisition for speed and agility, given the development of emerging technologies. Then the next morning, Wednesday, April 23rd, the INSA Foundation, INSA, will hold our first ever AI Foundation skill building workshop series. This is in partnership with Nexus and Salesforce. And this introductory program is designed to provide a deeper understanding of AI's potential to support mission needs. So excuse me, the good news on this too is that government and military personnel is completely free to you to attend. There are limited industry and student seats available, so please sign up if you haven't done so. And then quickly, looking ahead to May, we're going to hold our annual Huntsville program. This will be the 5th in our Common Threads program series in that area. May 14th, we'll hold an unclassified program featuring a job fair with the Deputy Director for the FBI's Cyber Division, Cynthia Kaiser. She will provide our keynote address. And then on the next day, May 15th, we will follow up with a classified breakfast and panel discussion on cyber threats to operational technology, featuring leaders from Army Material Command, MSIC, and LIDO. So for more details on all of this information, please go to the INSAonline.org website. And one more important thing before we close out, we just opened our 2025 scholarship program. This year, the INSA Foundation, INSA, is awarding 8 scholarships totaling $60,000 to undergraduate and master's students pursuing careers in intelligence and national security. The deadline for applying Friday, not February, that's already passed, Friday, May 23rd. So with that, if you know of a college student interested in the field, please let's encourage them to apply. Just like our discussion today, we talked about the future of the IC workforce as it relates to emerging technologies, to AI, to these pieces. And it's really important that we invest in these young students today. Please share this news with your colleagues and friends and with college-age children as well. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.